It's Saturday evening. It's time to talk about the very best comic books in the entire world with our good friend Drew as we celebrate the greatness that is the comic book reading medium.
The greatness is the comic book reading medium. Some Saturdays are better than others. This Saturday should be a pretty good Saturday.
Absolutely. This was a very, very good week. Now, before we get into all these, I do need to give a big shout out and thank you to the sponsor of today's video, the 616 Comics, the #1 producer retailer in the entire comic book industry. Definitely be supporting those guys at the 616comics.com. You can get 10% off with a code in the video description. Now, before we get into the really great stuff, we do need to mention that there was an amazing Spider-Man milestone issue this week, 975, I believe it is. And this is the introduction of this space-based Spider-Man that we've been talking about. We had the big cliffhanger last issue. Who's Spider-Man? Who's Peter Parker? And if neither of them are him, where is he? And that all gets paid off this week. Two different stories. John Romita Jr. kind of doing the first one, and then Pepe Larraz doing the second one. Our current Peter Parker is Ben Reilly. Not exactly a big reveal. I think most people had figured that one out. But I was not expecting Norman Osborn to be revealed to be the new Spider-Man.
Yeah, he got me. I was like, oh, you sneaky, sneaky dog. You got me on this one. Yeah, so I want to be clear on this, Wes. I do not hate this issue. There was some good and fun stuff here. But there's some bad stuff here in this issue. The first story here with the reveal, I enjoyed this segment for the most part. Once again, I think GRGR is more of a hindrance than a strength at this point. But how great would this have been if Pepe had done the art for this first story? I think it would have been terrific. And if that had been the whole issue, solid, recommend, probably the pick of the week. The second story, I thought it was as dull as watching paint dry. I couldn't care less about Peter in space, lifting weights and talking with an alien. It's just blah. But on the whole, it's a go to your store, check it out. Maybe you like it, maybe you won't. But the first story, yeah, it is a lot of fun.
I find that insane because I felt the first story was kind of lacking in the reveal of Norman wasn't all that compelling because I think it's kind of stupid. But I thought the second story where he was in space and you find out what actually happened to Peter Parker, still don't know how he got there, but being picked up by this alien and ending up with this new gold space, I guess, Spider-Man costume that's got some techno-organic virus elements to it was really, really interesting. And I'm certain that the Pepe Larraz art added a lot to it in the end. But I thought there were some cool concepts that were introduced in here. And we got to see Rocket freaking Raccoon.
Yeah, we got to see Rocket. Not as cool as seeing him die horribly as in the Predator versus Marvel, Predator Kills Marvel Universe, but we get to see Rocket at the very end. Okay. But honestly, look, to me, it was all about the mystery, the reveal, and the big payoff about who was actually Spider-Man, who was actually Peter Parker, and I got a kick out of that. I had a blast. This is just, it was just tedious. It was just watching Peter just chat back and forth with this alien that I could not care less about. It was just, if there's one thing I hate, is watching an amazing artist draw talking heads, and that's why I felt bad for Pepe Larraz in that second arc.
So as a milestone issue, I think it's worth it for the first two stories, but everything else about it is kind of forgettable, and it's $8, which is very
$8. That's, like I said, this is a coin flip. I don't know, heads or tails. You take your pick on this one. I personally, I don't know if I could at $8.
But there are 8 other books that I'm absolutely willing to recommend, no doubt, this week. Leading off with the indies, G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, 320, Larry Hama writing, Paul Peltier on art. The last issue, we saw that the stuff had hit the fan, and everybody was trying to hightail it out of there. We get the continuation here. The Joe's Ninja team in Springfield being hunted down, balls to the wall, high-paced action going on throughout this. You had the other surveillance team that was at the casino also being hunted down. We have strikes being called in from around the globe, backing these guys up. And I think Larry Hama absolutely nailed it in this one. This was a really, really fun ride.
Yeah, this issue was just full throttle action and adventure. Got the two Joe teams being hunted down by Cobra. It's beautifully illustrated by Paul Peltier, great fill-in artist. And this is a classic G.I. Joe premise written by the OG, Larry Hama, the man himself. And it looks like the next issue will be a silent issue. The way this issue ends, who we're focused on for the next issue, hell yes, take my money now. If it's Clay Mooneyham on the art, I'm buying 2 copies, one for me and one for someone else to read, because I want people to be reading this series and the next issue. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero is still a solid book.
Yeah, we'll see how that homage to the very famous issue 21 silent issue from back in the day goes. Also going to recommend Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 11, Jason Aaron writing, Juan Ferreira on art. And this continues the Turtles on Trial story arc. And I don't know that I would be recommending this without the Juan Ferreira art. We do get Rocksteady and Bebop in this comic book. He makes them look absolutely badass. But I will say when the Turtles are on trial and it's time for them to call their own witnesses, nobody's there to defend them. But then the people of New York start storming into the courtroom saying, hey, the Turtles have been saving us. This guy, Mayor Hale, is really the bad guy. And then they call them all onto the stand. While very comic booky, was a lot of fun. Really cool stuff going on here. And I think I'm going to miss this.
This was not the strongest of the run so far by Jason Aaron. Yeah, it's a weaker recommend, but yeah, like the art, you're here for the Juan Ferreira art. He is, once again, kills it. 11 issues in, solid. And look, I have a strong suspension of disbelief. I can go with Mutant Turtles eating pizza and doing karate. Yeah, I can buy that. But the mad mob barging into a courtroom, intimidating a judge into deciding how they want it, I can't. It just reminds me of that Simpsons episode where there's no justice like mob justice. And hey, we get that here. But yeah, it's the Juan Ferreira show here. It's solid. Do check it out for the art.
So you can accept mutant turtles that are ninjas, but you can't accept the suspension of habeas corpus or something like that. That's too far for you.
That's too far for me on this one, yeah.
Jeez. Why do you ruin it by being a grown-up? Also going to recommend Flash Gordon, number 11, Jeremy Adams writing, Will Conrad on art. We've got Flash Gordon realizing now is the time to strike Ming. He's at his weakest. He's just gone back to the throne. Not everybody is back under his thumb as he's trying to call out to all the other leaders saying, you are under my dominion now. Now you must pay me respects in the form of precious minerals and materials and stuff like that. Flash knows now's the time. They go and raid the castle. Turns out Ming was onto him. This was a really great issue. If it wasn't for a DC book, this would have been my pick of the week.
Yeah, this is right up there for me with the picks of the week. Yeah, so I will say this going in. If this is your first Flash Gordon book, you are going to be lost. Do not start with this book. Hopefully, if you check out the art by Will Conrad, you'd be like, I want to check out the previous issues. In that case, I hope you do. Because, yeah, this issue is a lot of fun, and a lot of fun for fans like us of the series who've been waiting for moments like this. Yeah, multiverse shenanigans going on here. It's great to see Ming back on the throne and Flash and his crew attempting to take down Ming. Will it work? You got to read to find out. This is a very fast-paced and well-illustrated book by Will Conrad. It's great to see him back on the book. He kills it once again. I love the ending of this, and I cannot wait for the next issue. Strong recommend for Flash Gordon.
A masterclass on how to execute a cliffhanger.
Yes.
100%. Now, moseying over to Marvel Comics, I have one book I want to recommend. Moon Knight, Fist of Konshu, number 12, Jed MacKay writing, Domenico Carbone on art. And I think I'm back on the bandwagon that this is the best book at Marvel Comics these days, at least as far as their ongoings go. We have the Wrecker arriving at the Midnight Mansion, needing help and saying, Moon Knight, you owe me. I went to Asgard and you got to use my, mystic crowbar or whatever. And it turns out that Wrecker is being haunted by ghosts, and Moon Knight is the only entity out there willing to save him. And Moon Knight is having some issues with that, and he's having to talk to his therapist about it. But I think Domenico Carbone does a really good job really channeling that inner Alessandro Cappuccio.
Yeah, this issue was surprisingly good. And yeah, Wes, I can't recall the last time we recommended a Moon Knight issue because it's been all wildly mid and mediocre since the last main series. But this was the first fun issue of Moon Knight I had reading in a long time. And we got the Wrecker. I haven't seen the Wrecker in a great role in a very long time in a book. And the artist here, like you said, Alessandro Cappuccio, in a way, Domenico Carbone, solid artist. I hope we get to see more of this guy in the future. This is a recommend, and a surprising recommend. Moon Knight is one of my favorite characters, and I can comfortably say, check this out. Jed MacKay is doing a lot, and most of it is very mid, but Moon Knight, once again, is his best stuff and where he should be.
Unfortunately, that's all we got from Marvel this week, but we got to recommend, so that feels like a win. DC had the biggest week of all. Going to recommend Batman number 1, Matt Fraction writing, Jorge Jimenez on art. The Jorge Jimenez art certainly is the standout aspect of the comic book. The illustrations are just absolutely amazing. I like the new design on the Batman. I like the new Batmobile. I love everything that Jorge Jimenez is bringing to the table on this one. But I also like the way that Matt Fraction is characterizing this version of Batman. I like his inner monologue. I like the way that he was dealing with people. I like that it's not a Bat family book, and it's finally a Batman solo book again. While the plot might not be the most exciting, world-breaking plot in the history of the worlds, I think the other things about it regarding the characterization and the art elevated enough to where I'm comfortable recommending this.
This is the Jorge Jimenez show. He absolutely killed it in this issue. But the story itself, honestly, if this were an annual issue or the 4th or 5th issue of the run of Matt Fraction, it'd be perfectly fine, But for me, your leadoff issue, your number one, I thought the story was remarkably mid. But I will say this as well. There's a line of dialogue in here from Batman where he says, "Not believing people can change." I call BS on that. Honestly, if it weren't for Jorge Jimenez, I don't know if this would be a recommend. His art does take it over the top. So check it out. It may not be for you. It may be for you. But give it a look, at least for the art.
Definitely would have expected something a little bit bigger and grander in scale for a number one issue. But me personally, I was happy with it. Also going to recommend Absolute Superman number 11, Jason Aaron writing, Carmine Diadomenico on art. I hadn't actually been reading Absolute Superman since issue number 3 or 4, I believe. I had multiple people tell me, you need to get back in, check it out. And I'm kind of glad they did. While there are some similarities, what's going on with Absolute Batman, this version of Absolute Brainiac, I find very, very compelling. I like the experiments that he was doing, but I'm kind of digging the addition of Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul to the Superman universe instead of just strictly being a Batman villain. There's even like a really cool, really weird General Lane moment where he goes in for the save, or at least attempting to save Jimmy Olsen and his daughter Lois. The art isn't quite Rafa Sandoval. In fact, it's not even close to Rafa Sandoval, but the story itself was good enough that I found it really compelling, and I think I'm definitely coming back for a couple more issues to see if maybe I'm into this.
I will say Absolute Superman has been the biggest conundrum trying to read it, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out the characters, trying to figure out Superman. But I will say, I do agree. I do like this approach to Brainiac. He is absolutely 100% creepy and disturbing. This is exactly how I picture Brainiac. And I think the art in this directly reflects this type of story that Jason Aaron is telling. It's a very dark story. And I like it when you get an artist that can merge with that very well. But when it comes to Superman himself, I'm just not a fan of this Superman in this run. He just comes across as just not a hero, just darker. He's a murderer. Murderer's cool. Heroes suck. This Superman's cool for that. Yay, awesome. And flip a coin. You may not like heroes. If you don't like superheroes, if you like Nemesis, you'll probably like Absolute Superman. There we go. Go in expecting Nemesis, and you may have fun reading this. I have to realize this isn't Superman.
You like Nemesis.
I do like Nemesis, and that's why I'm saying go in reading Absolute Superman thinking it's Nemesis.
I got you. It's definitely a darker take, but yeah. So I was pleasantly surprised, and I'll come back for some more Absolute Superman after this. Also going to recommend Absolute Wonder Woman number 11, Kelly Thompson writing, Hayden Sherman on art. Technically, this came out physically last week, but it didn't deliver digitally until this week. And I think Hayden Sherman is really upping his game as an artist, but he definitely got me into this story as we have Princess Diana going through Area 41, and she actually finally discovers this other Amazonian that was supposedly stuck in there. She's got all these wild tattoos of her, of this maze and everything going on in there. And she discovers the community that they've built with all the exile people that have been stuck in Area 41 for years and years, and all the lengths they've gone through to try and free themselves. Of all the Absolute books, this one might not be as fun as Batman and stuff like that. But as far as the story goes, I think this is the best one.
I found this story very, very interesting and compelling because we got to remember these people, they're trapped in a maze. They've been in it for God knows how long, and they're trying to escape. And when you try to think about that, if you're stuck in a maze for years, decades, that's going to drive you nuts. And I can't begin to imagine what that horror is like. And I do love the dialogue here between Diana speaking with the Amazonian in the maze. And I love what's setting up at the end with the Minotaur. And it's going to be great. But Hayden Sherman, I want to be clear here. I love him as an artist. His Batman Dark Patterns run, chef kiss, perfection. It's amazing. But comparing it to this Absolute Wonder Woman run, it's like, this is the same guy? I can't believe that. It's shocking glaring differences in art styles. But yeah, do check this out. This is a very compelling and interesting story. Absolute Wonder Woman is getting better, and I think may go down as I think will be the best Absolute book at the end of the year.
I think Hayden Sherman on Absolute Wonder Woman is starting to grow on me because I thought it looked pretty good.
He's getting better.
Final recommendation, Robin and Batman, Jason Todd #3, Jeff Lemire writing, Dustin Nguyen on art. The first two stories in the series I thought were fine, but I didn't really feel like they nailed anything. It didn't feel nearly as good as the original Robin and Batman telling the Dick Grayson story. And Jeff Lemire completely turned me around 180 on this one. I think this is easily the best issue out of both series. I think he nails the landing so freaking hard on this one with what Jason Todd is going through, the way that he sees the world, whether or not he even wants to go back to Batman, what Wraith really represents as far as an alternate path, seeing Jason Todd make the choices that he makes. And I think Dustin Nguyen's art, using that watercolor style that you just don't see very often in modern comic books today, really puts it over the edge. And I found this to be easily the best comic book I read this week. Congratulations, Jeff Lemire.
I'm glad you said that. This is my pick of the week. Jeff Lemire absolutely nails the voices of Batman, Jason Todd, Alfred, and the Wraith. Like I said earlier, Jeff Lemire explains why Batman believes people can change. If he didn't, he would just be like the Wraith, murdering people, Judge, Judy, and Executioner. Of the two Robin Lemire stories, this has been my favorite. And I enjoy how Lemire isn't afraid to touch on the darker elements of Jason's past, very dark elements. His personality and the real damage he's gone through in his body, mind, and soul, as well as the state of where Batman Bruce Wayne was at the time of recruiting Jason. This is a perfect jumping on point for anyone who wants to know about the early days of Jason Todd and his path on the way to becoming the Red Hood. The path is paved here. Strongest recommend, Dustin Nguyen. He kills it. Once again, pencils to watercolors, genius and beautiful. This will be on my list of best comics of the year.
Very, very high praise from Drew indeed. But Drew also has a project out there, and you've only got about a week left. Let's see what I'm talking about right here. Just 1 week remains for Naughty and Nice The Return on Kickstarter, blazing towards $25,000 with no signs of slowing down. Graham McDonald Comics brings back the original Bad Girls, written by Dolan Waddick, with art from Marat Michaels and edited by our very own Aaron Sparrow. What starts familiar quickly explodes into chaos as Naughty and Nice are thrown into a wild new world that changes everything. This isn't just a comeback, it's the launch of a brand new series, fully written and ready to roll. But the clock is ticking. When the campaign closes, there are no second chances. Back it now before it's too late. And don't miss the live closeout stream this Saturday, September 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on Thinking Critical YouTube, with Aaron Drew and special guests breaking down the final push. Search Naughty and Nice on Kickstarter or select the link in the video description. And if you're looking for more awesome comic book reviews, I do something very similar on the Hot or Not podcast, but it's much longer. It's actually about 2.5 hours talking about all the new comic books that week, whether they're good, bad, or somewhere in between. Definitely check that out on channel memberships and Patreon.